Hi, I'm Kimberly. I'm an instructor at the Elkridge DIY Center, and today I will show you how to transform a chopstick into a wand. I'm going to be showing two different techniques to use depending on whether or not you want to use a hot glue gun. Both of these can have fantastic results, so whether you want to cosplay as a witch, a wizard, a warlock, or a fairy, these wands can come in handy. The first method I'm going to show you is going to be with a hot glue gun. If you want to go ahead and skip this method, feel free, go ahead and fast forward and I'll show you how to do it with just the Elmer's glue and tissue paper. For the first method, you'll need your chopsticks, a hot glue gun and glue sticks, craft paint, and a paintbrush. First things first, every time before I start hot gluing, I always have something to protect my surface. And I always keep a little container of ice water handy nearby just in case, because even after 20 something years of using hot glue gun, I still need the ice water every once in a while. So the first thing you're gonna do is break your disposable chopsticks in half. Maybe rub them together if there's any little slivers. We're gonna be covering that part that is bent at an angle. We're going to be covering on both of these types, we're going to be covering that, so you won't have to worry about that. But just to make sure that you don't have any little bits. Now for the hot glue gun demonstration that I'm going to do, I'm going to be using some black glue sticks. This does not matter at all. It's just really a lot harder to see clear glue on the video, but we're going to be painting it so the color of your glue stick doesn't matter even a little bit, and the clear ones are a lot less expensive. So we're gonna start by figuring out how far up you want the pommel or the hand grip to go. I'm going to go a little less than halfway. So I'm going to start with a ring of glue right there so I don't go above it. And this is really where your creativity comes in. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And however you want to embellish your wand is up to you. So I'm going to just make some strings back and forth. Make sure and cover this pokey end with some glue, and I'm going to go all the way around. Keeping my hands far away from the hot glue. So I'm going to make a little bit of a rounded edge on the end. And then I'm just using the tip of the hot glue to melt in any of the little strings. You can also cut them off after you're done if you miss any. So you can see here that it's not even, but nothing in nature really grows perfectly, so it gives a little bit of dimension and detail to see the little grooves. So I'm going to let this dry without letting it touch anything. Just let the hot glue cool off and harden up so that it will be ready for the next part where I add the embellishments.
A few moments later.
So as you can see now, it is cool to the touch and I can handle it without burning myself. So now I'm going to add embellishments. Now you can do anything you like here. I'm going to add 3 little knots of wood along the length of it, biggest one towards the handle and then getting progressively smaller. But you can do whatever you wish. So this is just gonna be the same method as the other one. So you can also build up the glue on itself. So you can do one layer, I'm gonna do one layer here and then let it cool and move on to the next knob, the next knot in the wood. Moving on to the next knot in the wood, I just build it up a little bit. Then I'm gonna let that one cool, and the one on the very end is not going to be as big, so I might not even have to build this one up. So I just will do this all in one go. So just Getting enough glue on the chopstick to really make sure it gets in there. I'm gonna move back to the first one and build up a little more glue. So I ended up with a lot of glue on this one, so I need to make sure it can cool down and not make any drips. So I'm just make sure there's not any little strings coming off of it either. So it's not a big deal if there are, because you can just cut them off later. And I'm going to build up the middle one just a little bit, not quite as much as the first one. Then I'm going to let this dry without touching anything, so I'm just going to let it cool and harden.
A few moments later.
So now that the wand is cool to the touch and you're not going to burn yourself by touching any of the pieces, we're going to paint it. You can paint it any color you want. I wanted to paint my wand brown, but for some reason I didn't have brown, so I mixed up some green and red, yellow and white, mixed them all together and got my brown color. And you can even leave the paint a little swirled so that you, while you're painting, will get some highlights and lowlights in with the paint. So it'll give some dimension to your project. And you can paint this as detailed as you want, or just do one color over all of it. Here we go. I'm going to use a cardboard piece of paper to just put it down on once I am done painting, to let it dry. So you can add some highlights as you go, or you can come back with a little bit lighter shade later. And I'm going to paint this half, let it dry, and then I'll paint the other half. And now that the paint on the handle has dried, just finish up your wand by painting the rest of it. I'm actually going to leave the knots unpainted because I like this black glue that I've used after all. But you could achieve the same effect by just going back over and painting the knots a different color. And that's all there is to it. For the second type of wand I'm going to show you how to make, you will need your disposable chopstick, tissue paper, white school glue, paint and a paintbrush, and then whatever you would like to use for embellishments. You can use yarn, more tissue paper, beads, just as a few examples. So I'm going to be using the tissue paper, the glue, and my chopstick. And like the other one, I'm going to make the handle of my wand a little bit thicker, and also to cover up any of the little slivers from the wood. So I'm going to figure out about how long I want my handle to be. Again, a little less than halfway for this particular one that I'm looking for. You can do it as much as you want. So this piece of tissue paper, I'm going to end up tearing it right along here so that I can fold it down. So there we go. fold the torn edge in. And this might get a little messy as you put down the glue. We're basically making something similar to paper mache with the tissue paper. We're making sure to soak it all the way through so that it will get hard from the glue once it's drying. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue under here just so it will stay down, stay even. And then I'm going to do a bead of glue along the edge. Then I'm going to roll my chopstick up in the tissue paper, adding more glue as I go. I'm trying to keep it close to the chopstick so it's nice and snug. You don't want it so saturated that it's going to tear the tissue paper, just enough so that it'll attach and make a good solid handle. So I'm just rolling as I go, adding a little bead of glue right along the edge. Rolling, keeping it nice and taut. If you remember, this end has a little bit of an angle to it, so I'm just trying to ignore that right now and letting it roll around itself to make it flush with the rest of the chopstick. This handle isn't going to be 100% smooth, and that's okay. I always like to say that nature does not occur that way. So just a little bit of bumps and lumps into this handle is going to make it have actual extra dimension. So I think that's a good thickness for my wand handle. So I'm going to you can tear it, you can cut it. I'm just going to tear it along the edge, and then I will go back in with the glue and secure that edge down. As you can see right here, there's a little bit of a hole where my chopstick has a different kind of an end, so I'm going to fill inside of here with some white glue. I'm gonna do the same at the top. I'm just gonna do a little bead of glue around the edge, just in case there's any bit of it that didn't get glued down. So this will make it dry hard. And you're going to want to let this dry for many hours until it becomes hard and not sticky anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and add a few embellishments while it's still wet, and then the drying time can take place all at the same time. So if you don't have any extra materials for embellishments, you can use the same sheet of tissue paper. Just cut a long strip about inch and a half wide. We're going to use glue and roll it up to make just a long string. You could also use yarn and then coat it in glue, and it's going to be the same technique. And I'm going to use it to wrap around like in a spiral fashion all the way down the wand handle. So if you wanted to just use tissue paper, you would just do a long string of glue. And then we're gonna roll it up really tight to make our own string. I'm just going to twist it. And as we twist it, we're just making a little rope that we can use to do that spiral on our wand. And the glue would just make it stick all together. If any part of it is coming loose, you can either add a little bit more glue, add a little bit more twisting, and it should stick itself back together. And it doesn't matter what color you use for this because we're going to paint it. So there we go. There we have it. Going to twist it just a little bit in any places that appear to be loose. Utilizing the same glue, I'm going to glue once right around the pommel because I'm going to go around once, and then make sure that my rope is still wet from being stuck to itself. So I'm going to use that and maybe just add a few more drops of glue as I go. So I'm going to go around a couple times for the top, and then just start working my way down the handle in a spiral fashion, trying to keep my spacing approximately even. If there's a few little dry spots on your little rope, just put some glue on it. You can also use yarn that's soaked in glue to do this, any string that you have. You can use beads to embellish if you want. You can use just about anything. Probably should have picked a different color so you could see the other than the yellow on yellow, but you use what you have on hand. So that's what I did. And then I'm just going to wrap it once, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut this end off. Make sure there's plenty of glue so it'll stick down. And then this whole thing will need to dry for overnight, not 24 hours, but definitely overnight till it's nice and hard. So I'm just gonna fill in that end again with the glue. There we go. And make sure there's plenty of glue to keep that stable. Here it is before we paint it. We're gonna let this dry overnight. So now that the glue has had a chance to dry on this one, I've decided that I'm going to paint this wand gray. Some black and white paint, but I'm not gonna mix it thoroughly so that I get some variation in the colors as I'm painting it, so that I get some white, some black areas. And it'll just add some dimension into my finished wand. So just using whatever acrylic paint you have, and you can do this in any color you want. If it's going to be a fairy wand, maybe do it in purple or glittery colors. I'm just going to paint the handle first, and then I'll wait and paint the rest of the wand once the handle's dry. This is why I always use something to protect my surface. Crafts can get a little messy. Going back in and adding a little bit of highlights with the white section of my paint. Some of the colors got muddied as I painted it on. You can maybe add in some more black and add some low lights. However you want your wand to look is good. I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit, and then I'll come back and paint the rest. Okay, now that it's dried, all that's left is to paint the rest of it. Just going back over a few little places that I've missed. You can see the yellow coming through after it dried. And after you've finished painting, just let it dry and you've got yourself a wand. So there you have it, 2 different ways to make a wand out of a chopstick. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and get to cosplaying.